So, today I'm going to be taking apart my 390 by Asus, or Asus, whatever you want to call it, and I'm going to be reapplying the thermal paste due to the temperatures being a little higher than I'd want, and also just genuine curiosity. Before I get into it, I'll start off with a little bit of a story time. So I bought this guy back in November of 2015. So it's right about the 3-year mark. The warranty's about to go bye-bye on it. So I figured now, if I'm going to mess around with it, now's probably the time. When I first got it, I didn't really know much about temps and whatever you need to do to keep temperatures down on a video card and all that nonsense. So I just kind of ran it stock and didn't know much about it. Now, after doing more testing and benchmarking the crap out of it, I discovered that if I test it in my NZXT H440 case, with the fan stock, they'll ramp up to 61% and the card will hit 91 degrees. And if I run it at 100% fan speed, the card will top out at 79 degrees. At that point, it sounds like a jet engine taking off. And it's just generally a pain to listen to. I ran a semi-open test bench, sort of, with it, where I just took the side door off my Fractal Core 1000. No, 1100 case is what it is. The one without the mesh front, the solid front on it. Anyways, so with that one, stock fans hit 55% speed, 90 degrees on the card, and then 74 degrees when the fans were ramped up to 100%. All this testing was done with a 1-hour loop of the superposition benchmark, so it really stressed the hell out of it, just to make sure I actually had good, stable, like I probably could have done it for about 20 minutes to a half an hour, but I wanted the temperatures to really stabilize. The room temperature was always maintained at 22 degrees Celsius. So let's bring up the graphs here that I made, because I'm getting fancy and whatnot. Minimize that guy. All right. So here I've got just graphs of pretty much everything I just said. Temperatures at stock within temperatures at 100%. So the open air kind of test bench is in blue, and then when I put the card in the H440, these are the ones in red. So temperatures were lower on the open test bench. Well, whatever, not really open, but open enough. And then once I plugged in the card into my H440, temperatures got a little hotter, which is understandable. That being said, when running the fans at 100% inside the 440, I tried removing the front panel and also the front dust filter, and the temperatures went down to 72, which is lower than even the semi-open test bench that I tested it on, which went up to, what was that again? Temperature 100%. Yeah, so it went to 74 inside the Fractal case, and with the 3 120mm fans in the H440 blowing, I got it down to 72 with everything removed off the front. But that's not really the test I'm running, so everything mounted to the front with the dust filter and the front panel, the temperatures at 100% went up to 79 degrees, which that's 79 down to 72. That's like a 7-degree jump, which is a pretty big difference. Pretty much the stock temperatures, that's margin of error. And then also, what else do I have here? Power stock in, power. Right, so next I have the power graphs. For power, this is within margin of error. The cards hit about 198 to 197 when the stock fan configuration was in play. With the fans blowing at 100%, inside the H440, the temperature, the VRM power delivery went up to, was it 188? Yeah, it was 188 with the fans just blasting, and it was 173 blasting on the open test bench. So it was obvious that the VRMs were kept cooler, which I'll explain in graphs down here. VRMs were kept cooler, so they weren't sucking as much power, and they were being more efficient. So VRM 1 with the stock fan configuration, this is the temperature. I've got VRM stock on open air, which is the blue graphs. Stock fan hit 89, and then inside the H440 actually hit 87, so that was interesting. I believe that's because the fans were ramped up a little higher when it was inside the H440. And then VRM, when the fans were just blasting at 100%, VRM 1 hit 65 on the open test bench and 74 inside the H440. And then over to VRM, I'm not sure the difference which one is VRM1, which one's VRM2, but VRM2 seemed to stay cooler, so I'm assuming it's not main power delivery, it's probably memory power. I'm just assuming, I'm not sure. So VRM2, we've got just above 75 degrees when stock, and again, the higher ramped up fans of, what was it, 60, it was about 60% versus 55. So 60% versus 55 fan speed did manage to keep the VRMs a little cooler. And then VRM2, on open air with the fans at 100%, it hit, what was that, 58 degrees, and then 100% inside the H440 hit 63 degrees. So I think that's enough blabbering about. Let's get this back up. I'm going to take this sucker apart, remove the thermal paste, replace it, and then I'll probably upload the results to YouTube or something like that. We'll see what I decide to do with that. So, start by removing this nice warranty. It doesn't even say warranty void if removed, it's just a little sticker. But I'm not going to need that anymore. Let's just stab it. Stabbing is fun. Get rid of that sticker. Oh, it's one of those peely stick. Oh, man. I understand they do this so you can't just peel the sticker off and put it back on. I'll deal with that later, maybe, if I feel like it. These are small screws, so if you want to try this, definitely use a parts tray of some kind. Definitely don't do it on carpet. And also totally wear your static strap that I'm definitely wearing around my ankle. Oh, Mr. Super, hello. I probably will do some benchmarking between the 390X and the Fury. Problem with that is, streaming it is kind of difficult without a capture card, because you gotta swap out cards. You basically have to shut down the stream while you're swapping cards in my case, or I could just not be a scrub and get myself a capture card. That would be the best solution. Now, before I take the heatsink off, I'm actually going to... Where are they again? I'm going to grab a set of tweezers, and right down in here... right in there, we got ourselves a couple of... the bigger one is for the fans. The smaller one, the little connector here, is for the Asus strixx logo, which glows here on the side. I think that one's just a straight... It's probably somewhere in the range of 5 to 12 volts. I'm not sure. It could be 1 or 3 for all I know, but regardless. Gonna do this super professionally with a set of tweezers. Yeah, that card doesn't want to sit like that. Okay. Yeah, this is going to be a pain to get them off. On second thought, I'll just remove the heatsink and then be very careful and remove those connectors afterwards. So it looks like all of them are removed from the back. Let's do this nice and gently. Oh, it's actually coming apart fairly easily. Yep. The only thing that's stuck now is right down here. Still that. It's close to my forearm, right past my wrist. That's stuck to. That's actually held down to the back plate to encourage heat dissipation onto the back plate. Okay. Now I'm gonna try to do it the other way to make sure I don't pull out those. There we go. Okay, this is my first time disassembling a graphics card, so hopefully I don't do this incredibly wrong. Man, getting these tiny little connectors out is going to be an absolute pain. I don't really have nails. Actually, let's try. My kingdom for some nails. Okay, well, maybe now I'll try the tweezers. That's crazy. I don't want to grab a pair of needle nose. That just sounds dangerous. Now, can I actually just lay this down? It looks like I can, so I might just leave them in. The microphone probably didn't pick up most of that because I was leaning in. Oh well, what a shame. Okay, so here's the card. So there is VRM cooling on the card, which is definitely nice. There is no cooling, actively at least, for the GDDR5 chips going around it. That would have been nice. I know I've got an MSI 390X that I recently acquired. That one is actually cooling its memory chips, so you can probably, overclock them a little more potentially. I should actually get a good picture of this and potentially send it over to BuildZoid. Nope, that's Chrome. Let's try the camera app. There we go. If I can get a semi-decent picture of this. I'll take one more of the VRMs. I don't think he cares about the actual die. There we go. All right, so give this one last try. Wiggle, 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 wiggle. No, that ain't gonna budge. All right, good enough. So, the main complaint that I've seen about this card and heard of online is right in here. Make sure that I can lift this up a bit so people can potentially see it. They advertise, oh, we've got 5 heat pipes on this. Which, yes, they do. Only 3 of those 5 heat pipes are making direct contact with the GPU core. Which, again, heat transfer, I'm no expert, and I'm not going to pretend to be, but heat transfer between pipes, I can't imagine is excellent by any means. I could be wrong. This may be one of the reasons why the MSI version has just one big solid plate that covers both the GPU and also the memory chips, and would potentially explain the better thermals. I'm not sure. Another thing about this card is the heatsink's actually not that thick. It's a decent size. It looks, you know, in theory, it looks impressive. Like that there looks thick, but it's only for about, you know, a depth of about an inch. And then for the rest of the card, it's much thinner as far as heatsink. So, regardless, I'll stop yabbering about this thing. Let's start cleaning it off. Put that down. Okay. I did not say hi to myself. I said hi to you, Super. Give yourself some credit. Come on, man. I'm gonna get a few really good pictures of this, because I don't think I'm gonna want to take it apart again in the near future. I could be wrong. Okay, so another thing I was going to kind of investigate with this was the fan shroud. You know what? Yeah, I think I'm going to do that. Plot twist. See how easy this thing is to take apart. Famous last words. One screw, 2 screw. I see 3, 4, 5, 6. That's what I see. There's probably 1 or 2 hidden away, tucked somewhere. And no, Super, I did not get another thermal strip for the VRM. I'm going to be a disgusting scrub and reuse this one. And actually, I'm happy that I actually wrote down the VRM temps when I did all my hours and hours of testing. Because that way, when reusing the thermal pad that's there, I'll see if it actually makes a difference. In my case, at least. Some thermal paste or pads might be different for different companies. I'm not sure. Okay. That, I believe, should come up. Oh, no, I think I see one more. One down there. Anybody else up for the prices right? Anybody else need to come on down? Yep, there's one back there, too. I think one of them that I took off down here might actually be a fan mounting screw. So hopefully all 3 fans just fall out of the thing when I remove the shroud. It feels loose. Okay, I've definitely got to get those cables out of the main board. This is not happening. My curiosity, hello. Yes, this is a GPU. This is an R9 390 by Asus. Or Asus, depending on however you want to pronounce it. I mean, worst case, if I mess up the fan connections... Hey, come on. If I mess up the fan connectors, that might just give me an excuse to just strap some Noctua fans right to the heat shrink shroud. Why I be trolling? Why I be trolling the GPU? Even with tweezers, they just do not want to come off. That's pretty ridiculous. Okay, well. That runs through there. Well, maybe I can just... Oh, whoops. This little guy fell off. Oh, the graphics card actually cut me a little bit. Sick of my garbage. Oh, it's right in here. Okay. So these are, now that I actually have it off, I can look at them. These are 12 volts, half an amp, so they're 6 watts each. Made in China. Everflow. Motor your life. What a crock of garbage. So this goes in like that. Can't say I really understand why. Oh, it might. I think it's to keep the cables out of the way, maybe. I mean, a small part of me just wants to chuck them, but that might be irresponsible. Anyways, I've been holding this like this for a while now. You can see the heatsink. Oh, what do we have here? Reapplying thermal placeability. Likes my bold approach, sweat and blood. So yeah, I kind of wanted to demonstrate this. The heatsink on this, it looks very impressive down here when you're just looking at the edge of the graphics card. It's, you know, you got about an inch thick. The rest of it, the thing's only like maybe a centimeter thick at most. Like, it's really not that thick of a heatsink. Let's just nudge everybody forward here. There we go. Even at the other end, like, this is as thick as it gets. It's not that impressive of a heatsink. I'm a little, you know, I don't want to use the word disappointed. This is unacceptable. I want my money back. Blah, blah, blah. Anyways. Yeah. So I guess I can put this back down, since I'm not going to be replacing the heat shroud or heatsink today. Maybe some other time. We'll see. Okay, yeah. Those little pieces of plastic actually are there to hold the cables out of the way. So I'll be putting those back on almost immediately. Yes, so let's get the elbow grease going. I could figure out how to open up some isopropyl alcohol. I need an adult! There we go. When I went to the store to buy the thermal compound, they were like, oh, we got like some cheap stuff for $10, or we can get you the Arctic Silver for 20. And I was like, yeah, if I'm gonna go through the trouble of pulling everything off the GPU, I might as well not cheap out and get some, you know, higher grade thermal paste or whatever. I think it was Gamers Nexus did a big article on thermal paste, and it's quite extensive, to say the least. Okay, stabby stabby. The stabby stabby method works every time. Super's got some of the noctuous stuff. Some of that good stuff, man. I got you that primo good stuff. Uncut, pure, Actually, I probably shouldn't be saying stuff like that while streaming. Somebody might report me. In all honesty, somebody should report me for doing something like this. Yeah, I'm actually going to put the screws in. I'm going to put a couple of screws in at least. Right now. Keep that held down. Because I don't want this thing moving around as I'm rubbing it and having those little pieces of plastic fall off. Don't try this at home. I'm a professional moron. Oh, the screw stayed on. Yay! I love magnets. And yes, removing the thermal paste with alcohol is perfectly fine. A lot of people do it for CPUs. GPUs it's made out of the same material. If it's not perfectly fine, at least it's my equipment and not yours. Nobody saw that. Absolutely nobody saw that. At least that's what I'm gonna... Actually, you know, I can hold this up. Put this in place. Discover I've got the first one on backwards. I feel like there should be a third one of these down here, but they just didn't feel like including one. Either that or it fell off while I was taking the card apart and I just haven't seen it yet. Oh, my twitchy hands. There, that's how that's supposed to go. So in case anyone cares, these are the little pieces of plastic that go along with the cable. I got one in there, it's hard to see. That keep it from getting caught in the fan, or keep it out of the way, or keep it out of the who knows what. Honestly, do I need them? Probably not. But they were there to begin with, so why not? Now that I've got, I can see 1, 2... Right, that was one of those plastic pieces. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 screws are what hold the fans onto the heatsink. Which is an odd number, to say the least. If only Jeff were watching, he would have understood that joke. He would have laughed. And then I would have cried. Okay, let's put this back on. Lean it back down. Wow, and I just gave this a little push and the heat fins like bent. Get bent. Alright. Oh, that's why. Okay. Down in here, the heatsink actually has a piece of metal that covers up those fan cables. So that's why they didn't have one of those little pieces of plastic down there. Alright, let's just get a couple of these guys in here. So in total, it is actually 6 screws holding the shroud and the fans together. Alright, that'll be good enough. Let's get rid of some thermal goop. Okay, they definitely layered it on pretty good. So it wasn't a lack of thermal paste for sure. Like that's, you know, it's coming off and... I think it was a friend of mine, I'm not sure about this, had a gaming laptop by Asus. Asus! And the thermal paste in it actually, like, turned to sand almost over time. Like, it got really, really chalky, and it just, you know, he obviously needed to take it apart and reapply it. He noticed it pretty quick. That was probably the last piece of computer hardware he took good care of. Because he's broken pretty much everything else he's touched. But yeah, super. If you, I don't think I won't be doing this with my Fury. I'm not suggesting we do it with yours. What I'm suggesting is potentially, I can grab a can of compressed air. I remember last time I saw your Fury, that it's starting to look a little on the dusty side. So I could grab some compressed air somewhere. You know, that wicked 5-finger discount, man. And we could clear the dust out. Maybe run some tests first and see if it actually makes a difference in the temperatures. I'm assuming it's maybe 1 degree, maybe 2. If that, probably not even. But I can dream, right? I can have hopes and dreams. So I can see it in the glare. The camera probably won't pick it up. But I can see where the die of the GPU is making contact with the heat pipes. So the one on this outer side and the one on this inner side were not making direct contact with the GPU, which might explain, you know, some of the thermal performance of this thing. I'm not sure. Maybe it is very, very good heat transfer between pipes. I'm really not sure. I have my doubts. All right, now comes the real fun stuff. The GPU die. Actually, yeah, my curiosity, if you're still in the chat. When I was in college, my final project, I had my board with all its parts mounted right to it, and I was cleaning it off, getting rid of all the flux and all the nastiness that comes with soldering stuff to a board. And so I'm cleaning it off, and I'm basically drenching the thing in water. Like, I've got the thing pretty much submerged, just dousing it like crazy. And then one of my classmates looks at me like I'm crazy. He's like, this is electronics, man. What are you doing getting this thing wet? And I looked at him, I said, no, just think about it. Because there's no battery installed. My project I never really use it with a battery. Anyways, and the board had no power. So if your board has no power, it's really not that big a deal. If you douse it in water, or in this case, get it all covered in rubbing alcohol. Just something to note. Now, the thing that some people might say, oh, well, like, I drop water in my computer and blah, blah, blah. Like, that's... If it's a laptop, you got a battery, so that's constant power going to it all the time. And that's where things can go boom. Like, even a desktop computer, I wouldn't... There is a CMOS... There's a few batteries in a computer, not very many in a desktop. And I wouldn't exactly want to submerge mine by any means, but I would be curious to see if you were to unplug power completely from a desktop, how messed up it would get. Thermal paste is coming off basically in clumps. I've got a lot of it off the die itself. There's just some residue surrounding it. What a wonderful word, residue. Now, the thing I'm most excited for is to apply the thermal paste and then post it to YouTube and see how many people freak out. They're like, "You're doing it wrong! You put too much thermal paste! You didn't put enough! Oh my god! You did that!" To which I would reply, this is probably not going to work anyways when I put it back together, so what does it matter? And there are a few clumps caught between some of the... I'm not sure if those are capacitors or resistors. I'm assuming it's a bunch of little capacitors, surface mount capacitors, just surrounding the die. I don't think I'm going to be able to get all the goop out of there. I'm still getting some. I'm definitely getting to the point of diminishing returns, though. Let's get a couple of pictures while this is nice and clean. Or at least semi-clean. Alright, now, actually, before I reapply, I'm going to put all of the screws back into the heat sink before I forget. I find it odd that the Twitch app, if I close it out on my phone and then reopen it, the chat just, like, not completely close it out and clear it out of RAM, but just close it, go to Chrome, look something up, or take a picture like I just did, it clears out the chat. Not that I have the world's most lively chat anyways, but it would be nice to still have it up. See all the sick burns that Super's got on me today. That would appear to be cross-threaded. Come here, cupcake. Aww. Magnetic screwdrivers are the absolute best. I'm also not tightening on these screws like crazy. I definitely don't want to strip them. I mean, once again, it'd just be an excuse to just strap some Noctua fans to this heatsink. But for now, I'm just gonna leave the stock heatsink. So now I'm left with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 screws. Good. Oh, the all-important moment. I'm right-handed, so I'm not going to do it that way. Let's get this right. Get off of there. Good. So when I push that down, it should smush it all over the GPU. And hopefully improve the thermals. I have my doubts, but I have hopes. I hope you're ready for this absolutely awful idea. Make sure I get those screw holes lined up. This is going to be absolutely painful to watch, I'm sure of it. The holes look semi-lined up. Gonna give it a little press. It made a sound. I don't know what kind of sound it made, but it definitely made a sound. Maybe a little squishy. Take a look in there, make sure the compound isn't overlapping over anything like crazy. Nope, alright. Screws back in time. With my luck, this will probably make my thermals worse. I'm actually going to put in this screw up here. To make it a semi-X pattern. I mean, honestly, if the thing works, I think that's just par for the course right there. Actually, you know what? No. I'm not leaving that junk on the screw cap. I'm surprised I might actually have this done in the space of an hour. Like, I've only been streaming for 50 minutes. That's an opening for somebody to say, but it feels like an eternity! These screws I actually want to get on, not super tight, but fairly tight, to make sure that the heat pipes are making decent contact with the GPU core. Right, I was going to bring this up earlier, but kind of forgot. So only 3 of these heat pipes are making contact with the GPU die. with the R9 390. My MSI 390X has a big heat plate, which covers both the GPU and the memory chips. Give this another tighten. I feel like this one's cross-threaded. Right, got off topic. So, your 3 heat pipes that are making contact with this, they are making direct contact with the other 2 extra heat pipes. But, again, the heat transfer, I'm not sure how good it would be. Get a closer look at that guy. That does look like it's threaded in pretty much all the way. But it's not sitting in deep like the rest of them are. Is this properly lined up? Yes, it is. No, it just wants to be stubborn and stick out a little more. Good enough. My theory as to why they did this for this card and only left 3 of the 5 heat pipes touching the GPU core is relatively simple. It's because of this guy. That's just the same card. No, it's not. This is a Strixx GTX 980 Ti. See, it's got the NVIDIA SLI bridge up here. I'm not lying to you. It's also marked on this little piece of sticker down here, but there's no way you're going to be able to read that. Now, the GPU die on a 390 is 438 millimeters square. The GPU die on a 980 Ti is 601 millimeters squared. This one is 37% bigger of a chip. Now, maybe I'll take this apart someday and investigate for myself. I probably will. But I'm assuming they designed the heatsink for this. And potentially also, I think it would have also fit quite well. What is it? The R9 Fury is a 596 millimeter squared die, which is very close. It's off by 7 millimeter squared, which is not a huge difference. Anyways, but I think this heatsink was designed for those 2 GPUs because of their size, and they could manage to get all 5 heat pipes to make contact, which, would make sense. And then when it came for the time to design the 390 and the 390X, they just went, oh, you know what, let's just, and as opposed to redesigning it completely, I can understand why they did it, and they didn't want to go through all the development and the time and whatever to make this its own. Basically, it would have to be almost its own heat shroud, potentially its own fans. It would have been almost a completely different graphics card. But still, I'm not sure about this, but if it does impact thermals that much to have those heat pipes not making contact, it might explain some things. But yeah, I might, we'll see. Maybe even this afternoon, I'll get bored and stream myself taking this guy apart. That being said, I've not even plugged this into a computer yet and tested it for myself. So I'll probably do that before, not next weekend, maybe in a couple weekends. I'll take this guy apart, run a bunch of benchmarks for it first, take all its temperatures, then maybe take this apart and reapply the thermal paste. But for now, I'm going to go run some benchmarks. I might actually stream the benchmarks of this. I'll have to shut down because the PC I'll be using is currently, running the stream. Problem with not having a capture card, I guess. So yeah, I might run benchmarks of this and stream it for the afternoon. We'll see. I'm hoping for at least a noticeable difference in temperature. Anything from 3, 4, or 5 degrees, I'll be happy because the 390 is a well-known. It's a furnace. The thing puts out a lot of heat. There's no denying that. But if I can get the temperatures down at all, and in turn bring the fan speed down and make it quieter, make it run. Anyways, if I can make that happen, then I'll consider this a success. Besides that, that's pretty much all I have for as far as streaming me taking apart and putting this together. I managed to do it in under an hour, so that surprised me. I was almost expecting to take all afternoon, but regardless, I'll shut down for a bit, and I'll be benchmarking, probably in the range of about, I don't know, 20 minutes to a half hour. So if you want to come back and join me for that, that's up to you. If you don't, I'll just cry in a corner, no problem. But thank you for tuning in for this part, and have a good afternoon.